All right, we are live. Welcome, everybody. We'll get started here in about a minute or two. Let everybody hop in. I know we just sent an email out saying we are officially live, so we'll make sure everybody hops in. In the meantime, for today's webinar, as with all webinars, it is going to be recorded. You should get an email within about 24 hours after the session is done with the recording. You can always go to the Montessori Foundation's YouTube page to see previous recordings as well. Um, we always try to make these as interactive as possible as well. So, feel free to use the chat, use the Q&A. If you raise your hand, we might be able to bring you up, turn on your mic so you can chat. And always, we always appreciate and read the feedback that we get to make sure we're delivering these webinars on topics that you want to be listening to and hearing about. So love to hear what you liked, what you want to learn more about. If we could provide any other help or resources, whether it's consulting and professional development, whether you need software, we have solutions there for you, and you can always just let us know in the survey, check the box, and we can follow up with you. But with that being said, I want to get us going. Tim, I'll turn it over to you real quick and do intros and really kick us off.
Well, thank you. And again, we're brought to you by AIMS, marketing software for independent schools, and the Montessori Foundation, which is your nonprofit Montessori and beyond Montessori, Episcopalian, faith-based, independent prep, Waldorf, you name it. We do consulting, strategic planning, marketing studies, and so forth. And I'd like to introduce my dear friend and colleague, Dr. Lindsay Pollock, who's the provost of Sarasota University, which I'm very proud to be a member of the board of trustees. And Lindsay is going to play Johnny Carson tonight and work with our guest, Sarah Kennedy-Berge. And let me just turn it over to you, Lindsay.
Thank you so much, Tim. It's an honor to be here today and to welcome our guest, Sarah Kennedy-Berge. I had the pleasure of meeting Sarah when we started talking about a dual enrollment option at Sarasota University and partnering with Water Park Montessori. And Sarah was the director of Water Park Montessori International College, which is now, Sarah, correct me, which is now EMC. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes, we've just changed names to European Montessori College, so EMC. Yeah.
I love the EMC. It helps me remember, and there's all the science around that. So
exactly.
it's fun. I love that that shift in marketing and really capturing the spirit of what you're doing. Sarah, I'm honored to introduce you today. Sarah holds a Bachelor's of Fine Arts with a focus on education and a Master's of Education in Advanced Teaching. She also earned her Montessori qualifications for early childhood, lower L, and upper L, and is a certified Montessori trainer for these same age groups. She's been working with children since 1994 and as a Montessori kindergarten and elementary school teacher from 2005. Sarah lives in Norway and is there joining us toward the end of the day from Norway, right? It's 7 hours ahead.
Yes.
So I'm actually in Costa Rica right now in the very warm jungle, and it's noon here, but for you, it's 7 o'clock, right? It's 7 p.m.
It is. It's an early evening. Yep.
So thank you for taking time to join us in the evening when you could be doing so many other things. Sarah, you recently authored a book called Montessori in the Digital Age. I know you've authored many other things as well. And I think you have made such a valuable contribution to our Montessori community and beyond, because, we're all struggling as educators with how to maximize the impact of AI and digital tools, right? While maintaining our humanity and making sure that our kids are safe and that we're operating in a way that we're not abdicating our minds and our abilities to this, quick and easy digital world.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to hear what you have found out and and what your book is all about. I'm also looking forward to hearing you speak at the AMS conference that's coming up in March.
Yes, thank you so much. Oh, it's been such an exciting journey, to be honest, because as you said, I started off as in arts, as an art teacher. And so to say now today that I'm working fully with technology sounds a bit odd. But through my Montessori journey, I was in love with the hands-on, the materials just appealed to me. And then when technology became more and more prevalent, I was a bit resistant. I didn't want it taking over, and I hear that so often. It's taking over, it's taking all the attention, we're not able
Mhm.
to present all of our materials because they want to do other things, and it's very common. That's a very common comment. But in 2020, we started an Erasmus Plus project, which was focusing on taking Montessori principles and blending them with creative technology. And it wasn't meant for Montessori schools. It was meant for public schools around Europe that were struggling because our focus was then on multicultural schools that had a varied socioeconomic background within the children, the student group, and how to bring them in. And so we thought, well, let's get creative. We can use some of these Montessori principles that we have, and we can include them in by doing hands-on activities that don't maybe require language, because language barriers were a barrier. Yeah. And this
Mhm.
project took on a life of its own, really, because it was so impactful. And so we've now started another project as a continuation of this one project. But as I was working through that, I thought, but wait a minute, this was so successful in these schools. Why can't we look at it in Montessori schools where these principles are already implemented and there's already that foundation there? So I started working about 2 years into that project. I started working with implementing it even more focused into Montessori schools. And wow, it's been a journey. It's definitely been a journey, both for me in seeing how to create that balance when we have these fantastic Montessori materials, we have the pedagogy already as this foundation for us, but how can we bring it in to a future where in this digital age where it's so prevalent? Whereas when Montessori was writing and working, she was talking about machines, and she was talking about how
Mhm.
to use them as tools in the classroom. But
Mhm.
she always says, but they can never replace what it is to explore and to use your hands. And the focus that she had on the human, on the humanity of everything. And that is what I've tried in all of my work to hold on to, is we are humans
Mhm.
first and foremost.
Right.
And just today, I had a conversation with some colleagues who were saying, well, my job will be replacing, I'll have AI replacing me in a couple of years. And I thought, yeah, perhaps that is a possibility. But at the same time, I see people seeing all this AI content and seeing all these tools and sort of ignoring it now. I want real human content. I want real human interaction. And so I think with that in mind, I think that will help guide us also into what we bring in and how we integrate technology into the classroom. So my work has been on the creative technology side of things with hands-on building, that maker constructive kind of focus, but also
Uh-huh.
now on the AI as creating a tool. So it's a very interesting journey, I'll tell you.
Are there certain subject areas that you find more compatible in using AI, or would you say it really crosses all of the subject areas, all the disciplines?
Yeah. I really believe it crosses all disciplines, and it can be used as a tool, and it can also be used as a hindrance if we're not careful. Obviously, there are
Sure.
many
Sure.
pitfalls and many fears, but I think those fears that is the first thing I hear voiced when I talk to
Hmm.
people about this, right? There are
Right.
some people who have moved towards the I'm open, I'm not very resistant, I'm receptive for this, and I'm curious to get things moving, and I want to explore tools. And then there are others who have that fear that are stopping us from really implementing it in a good way because we aren't really exploring it. And so it's a sort of paradox. We have a fear of technology that it will harm children, and AI is, of course, front and center now, but
Right.
screens is another one. Any screens, you usually get a lot of pushback from that. And yet, we ourselves as adults are hesitating to engage with it, to understand
Right.
it. And if we can't understand something, we can't guide the child with the confidence and the intentionality that we need, the purpose of these tools. So I think it's something we really need to work on as those who are working with adults, if we're in leadership positions, to work with their teachers, to feel that they are supported, to feel that they have time to explore things and see, where can I bring it in? Because unless I understand the tool, I won't know which subjects I can integrate it in. I won't
Right.
know how I could use it as a tool in any of these subjects, right? It's just, oh no, it's taking over our literacy and the children aren't writing, they're cheating, and
Right.
these
Right.
fears. Yeah, which they will unless we have introduced it with intentionality. Yeah.
So I visited an interesting school not too long ago in the Houston area, and in the upper grades, starting at about about third grade, it was half and half, hands-on materials, and then the students were being given tablets, and then starting in fourth grade through high school. So this was a whole kinder through 12th grade school system.
Mm.
Then starting at fourth grade, all the students had Chromebooks. So no paper, no
Mm.
pencil, no books in the classrooms. And it was a really interesting experiment, if you will, in that their take on it is you can find everything you need in your computer. So, if you wanted to bring paper or pens or something with you, it wasn't provided, but it was okay. It was tolerated. But the idea is that, moving into this digital age, if you will, that really it's more important to teach keyboarding than handwriting and to access everything online. I think this is an extreme, but it's got me sort of thinking, and it left me cringing, when I left.
Yes. Oh,
But
I'm so
maybe
uncomfortable even just hearing you describe
maybe
it.
I left thinking, well, maybe I'm behind the times. I don't know, but I think, there are lots of times I find myself scribbling a note or, writing something on a sticky note, or maybe I'm just old fashioned, but, and not to criticize the school, it's just really, it was very different than anything I had been exposed to. So, I think we'll find all, extremes, right, on the continuum of this implementation. But what has your research found? What do you recommend? What are you finding? And
Well,
what are
this
your
is really
initial thoughts
interesting
on
because
that?
it is,
Yes.
I'm getting more and more uncomfortable as I hear that everything you need could be found in a Chromebook. And then you said you can find pencils. And I'm like, yes, exactly. Pencils aren't found in a Chromebook. Pens, papers. No, yeah, this is really interesting. Here in Scandinavia, Norway and Sweden, for example, there was a huge push suddenly. Let's get iPads. Every child gets an iPad, and we were very proud of that. Well, I was resisting, and now they went whoops too fast, and they're bringing them back out again, right? And it's been this constant push and pull, and
Sure.
it's really interesting to watch. And now you can see that the idea is, okay, we didn't have any, and then we had everything. Well,
Hmm.
guess what? It's the balance between the two, right? And
Yes.
so when we have the computers, I am a huge advocate based on all of the work that I've done and watched and observed the children working, I'm an advocate of having the computers available, the Chromebooks available, the iPads available on the shelf as our tools, just like we have pencils on the shelf, and
Sure.
just like we have the paper and all the things that they need to create, the materials. It's there, they're materials. But we need to really rethink the way we look at these tools because they really are just that. And I have an expression that I keep saying, it's not the invention, it's the intention. It's not the computer that's the
Oh,
problem,
sure.
it's the intentionality behind how we use it. How do we view this tool? And if we think that, oh, it's everything we need right here, I'm going to keep it on my desk all day, then we are misusing it. We're not seeing it as the potential for the whole child
Mm-hmm.
education, right?
Sure.
Because there's more than just sitting in front of a screen. There's more human interaction, the movement, the creativity, going out into nature, and all of these things are so crucial for us as humans.
Sure.
Never mind these students who are sitting there. And when I go into classrooms and I see children and they all have their computer, and it's a great thing because they all have a tool. However, what I see is they're sitting there with their computer, and oftentimes they're not really sure what they should be working on. So they open their computer and it's this mindless like scroll thing that happens, kind of like what we do on phones, you know?
Yes, yes.
And you can see that it's just a habit. They just open up and start going into websites instead of really thinking, why am I choosing to open this device? What am I going
Mm-hmm.
to do with it? And when I was in the classroom with the upper L, we had a computer application where they had to fill out why they were choosing to work. I mean, back in
Ah,
that day, it was the stationaries, but there were a
sure.
few laptops. But it sets the intention of I need this tool for something. And it's because I'm doing a bigger project on whatever, whatever we're
Right,
exploring at the time. But I'm using it as that tool. It's not the main focus of my day. And when I'm
right,
finished with it, hey, I can put it back, you know?
right.
And that is something I think screens as well, using the iPad in that way and being able to put it away after we're finished. It's such a life lesson because one of
Absolutely.
the fears is that they're just going to keep scrolling and it's
Mm-hmm.
addictive. And it
Yes.
can be addictive.
Yeah.
But if we can model as adults, if we can model closing the computer and putting it away and pulling out a book or pulling out a material or pulling out something else that's physical and having a conversation with someone else, that I
Yes.
think is really what brings out what we need as whole human beings instead of just that screen, you know?
Yes, and I think that conversation and that discussion is crucial in ensuring that our children maintain that connection and that relationship to one another, and then sharing their thoughts about, oh, I read, XYZ on the computer. Did you read something maybe that was contradictory to something I read? And let's have a discussion about that. Let's talk about, what was one more credible than the other? What were the
Exactly.
references and the resources, and
Yes.
how did you find that? But really having that dialogue, and at least here in the United States, being able to build the capacity to listen to different aspects of the
I mean,
same argument, right?
yeah,
Or the same perspective, um,
absolutely.
uh, or the same topic, I should say, but
Yeah,
hearing different perspectives and learning from each other, I think,
yeah.
is becoming a lost art.
It
Um,
really is. This is one of what I call a practical life skill in the
yes,
Montessori, context. But it is a life skill or a studying skill of lateral reading, right? Just what you said. I'm opening a source. Well, okay, where were my sources sourced, right? Where was that information pulled from? And so when we can compare that. And then we do something else in Montessori, the Socratic, the seminar, that discussion,
yes,
right? Where we are training ourselves to hear what the other person is saying, not just
yes,
sitting there waiting until we can give our opinion, right? But
that's right.
actually listening, pausing, digesting what they're saying before we give a meaningful response. this is so key to exactly what you said. We're so fast at giving our opinion and thinking we're always right instead of actually thinking, well, that's an interesting point. Actually, now I have to go and rethink what I was previously thinking. And
Yeah, and I
wow, what a
think
life skill.
that become we've come so accustomed to this one-way dialogue, especially through social media, all of these different apps. People are throwing their ideas out into the world, and there are few opportunities for a true dialogue. Most people aren't waiting to see and engage with the comments, and all too often we see people who may be disgruntled or dissatisfied or entrenched in a certain position. They're throwing that information out there, sometimes in a very destructive manner, and not really waiting to see what impact this is having on other people, both as individuals and communities. People suffer with those derogatory comments and hateful language, and we're really, as a collective, we're losing that empathy for other people in this big, vast digital world, where people are having these one-way conversations, if you will.
Right. We're losing the responsibility, right?
Right.
I mean, one of the key
Absolutely.
Montessori principles is freedom with responsibility. And yet we have been given this freedom of, interacting with anybody, people we don't know from anywhere in the world, at any time of the day, on any topic. There are so many platforms. And yet because there's a bit of anonymity, we have taken away that sense of responsibility to balance it out. And
Right.
again,
Yeah.
we have this screen between us that we
Mhm.
lose that human connection at times.
That's
And
so
I
true.
feel that this is one of those key things to be able to sit with that. What am I actually thinking at this time? What
Mhm.
is it that made me react like that? Or when I hear someone challenging my view, it hurts. It's not comfortable. But
Right.
I would love to think that we could sit with that and start reflecting, why does that make me uncomfortable? And just go deeper into that because it's maybe challenging who I am as a person.
Mhm.
Okay, but what does that mean? Wouldn't it be even more rich to build your character if you could be more open and have a broader perspective, right? So I keep going back again to Montessori's words about rooting out anger and pride. And I think
Yes,
that goes directly into anger and pride. The
you're
comments
right.
of
Yeah.
challenging I have to be right. I have to be that
Mhm.
warrior in the digital space. And by putting others down, that makes me better. I find it quite a fascinating phenomenon to watch now because that
Mhm.
is so far from what we want humanity to be going towards, right? We want
So,
to, the whole expression of a rising tide lifts all ships, that we together can help each other and bring us all forward rather than having to be in constant conflict.
well, and I think one of the things that we talk about in depth, is peace education,
Yeah.
and then the introduction in the classroom of peace education. We have the peace table. We have our focus on grace and courtesy in the classroom, and yet what I've observed is that in the past we've sort of I've assumed as an educator, that our children are coming to us with a general idea of what grace and courtesy might look like in their home or in their social setting. And I think that what our children are being exposed to in the media, in social settings, in traffic, right? um, it makes them very vulnerable, in their development to trying to figure out the world, and then our responsibility as educators as to overtly teaching grace and courtesy in the classroom and beyond is even more incumbent on us. Tim, I see you've got your hand up.
I do, I do. And you guys are doing such a great job of just rolling with this. I'd like to explore a couple of pieces of the bigger topic that we haven't gotten to yet. One is the whole issue of how people use AI at this point, whether it's a student or whether it's someone in school leadership or a teacher. Um, a lot of people are using it kind of as like a giant Google or Wikipedia, but it's so much more. And I think of my trained AI as my grad student. Really great student, great assistant, um, but she's so much more. I mean, I can say, help me understand the way you came up with this decision, or show me the contradictory perspectives to what I've just written, or let's look at this from an ethical Socratic point of view. So whether it's the issue of, I don't know if you've ever used it to go through multiple years of balance sheets and PLs and see what the patterns are. I'm talking about, financial records, for example, or just your own bank account. Where could I save money? This thing can be such an incredibly helpful tool, but it's not perfect. But you can really engage with a conversation with it in a way that's very helpful. I think we could teach kids that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I think you pinpointed exactly what it is. It's an amazing tool. And yet, to be users of a tool, need to understand it enough to understand its capacity, both its possibilities, but its limitations. To understand that there is an ethical bias often there, and you said something really important, Tim, about training your AI. We need to be working with our AI to look for these things, that this is my voice, this is what I represent, and therefore when I use the tool, I need that agent to be reflecting of what my views are. You can set that up in the settings. It's actually quite simple to do. And yet we use it as, like you said, a Google or a Wikipedia search. And I think when you think about the capacity of a Google search, there are plenty of results that we would get, but we're required to sort through them and find what we want. Whereas AI suddenly takes everything and makes a nice little um, sort of summary of what it is that they found. But really, if we think about even the sustainability aspect of what the impact is when I use a Google or an AI for a Google search, what could have been a Google search, right? It's the what we do with that result. I can sit here and say, write this for me, and I need a 10-page paper, and that's a huge fear of teachers. They're going to cheat. Okay, let's take what they do and let's take what is produced, what is generated, and let's do something more with it. It's not just a copy paste. Let's take that and let's take it apart and parse it for what it actually includes and what are the sources it used, and maybe those are biased, just like we were talking about. So it's again back to the intentionality of being aware of what this tool is and how it can be used, because it is a brilliant co-creator. I am a total fan. Let me say that right out. But at the same time, I'm cautious because I know how, I can't tell you the exact way it's built, but I understand it better as a tool and its capabilities versus just blindly using it. And
Mm-hmm.
don't even get me started on the whole image generation and now, what's real and what's not real. This is another thing that we really have to be cautious of. But it starts, Lindsay, it starts like what you said. It starts with the youngest children and the grace and courtesy of our curriculum. Things like my digital footprint, what is okay and not okay. And I when I work with schools, I tend to say this so often. We don't have any control about what happens with this child when they leave our walls, our school building, if you will. But we have the possibility for those 6 hours every day. We have them in our care, and we
Right.
can model how we want to be. We can model that grace and that courtesy. We can be observant when we, for example, I made a material on a digital footprint where it's just scenarios and the children discuss. There's no right and wrong, but they're sorting it between red light, yellow light, and green light. It's okay, it's not okay, and it might be okay, right? Uh, and just that conversation is so informative for us as observing adults because we get an understanding maybe of what is happening in the homes, and we can help guide them without being preachy, without
Right.
judging, just guiding them into better habits of using technology while they're in our care in our environments.
That's a brilliant material and one that anyone could use, regardless of the
Yes.
school setting. But having those conversations and having them being student led is really the
Yeah.
key.
Oh,
And as you
100%.
point out, observing as the adult in the room and hearing the children's voices. What do our children think is appropriate? How do I need to guide them? Do you have any tips for school administrators or teachers who are introducing technology in their classrooms? I loved your quote earlier about the difference between the invention and the intention. I'm going to use that in the future. Love
I think
that.
it's on my laptop. Yeah, it's a sticker on my laptop here.
I
Um,
love
but yeah, I mean, there's two sort of paths of advice here because I think the biggest thing for the teachers who are going to implement this
it.
is
Hmm.
one, spend time with the technology before ever bringing it into a classroom.
Mm.
Understand it enough to be able to present it. I sort of draw the parallel when we are doing our own Montessori training, we're learning the math materials, for example.
Sure.
We don't go straight out and present it to our children. We have to know it first to be able to
Yeah.
present it. We know
Yes.
how it works. We know how the trinomial cube is put together and how it's related, and we know the further, work that we do with it. So then the same thing we need to think about with the technology that we introduce. We need to know the possibilities, how we can present it. I mean, Montessori took and observed and scientifically sort of broke it down into the steps. Look at how she presented, how we present things for 3 to 6, slowly, step by step. And that's what we need to do to understand it enough to know how I'm going to present it with that intention, with purpose into the
Yes.
classroom instead of just bringing all of these things in. And then what happens if we do that? Oh, we end up pulling it right back out, like I was telling you with all the iPads, because it wasn't thought through well enough. We weren't
Sure.
intentional with what we were bringing in. So that means we need time as teachers to understand it. We
Hmm.
need a safety space. We need time for trial and error, for exploring with the tools with a friendly attitude to error. And I keep saying we're really good with giving that to children and we forget to turn it back on us. We need to have a friendly attitude to our error as well. And I think then taking a step back, would be my advice for leaders, would be
Hmm.
to provide that space so that the teachers feel. That's one of the biggest fears, actually, that teachers have given back to me when I've been asking around.
Sure.
When am I going to have the time to learn all of this? I have enough going on.
Right.
I have all of, and we know
Right.
teachers are busy. So we,
Yes.
as leaders, can we provide the network, but the space, the physical space, the time, and the support as well, that space that we can hold that time that they need to understand it so the teachers aren't feeling rushed and challenged in bringing in the technology. They can
Hmm.
reflect on how do I want to bring it in? Well, first of all, what I want to bring in, and then
Sure.
how we bring it in. Yeah. So I
Yes.
think that would be my first and biggest advice. And I think I see it when the leaders are in there with the teachers and supporting and bringing in either, having time to do workshops and get your hands on the tool and these kind of things, that really makes it so that the teacher's shoulders kind of relax a bit and they're able to bring it, think about how we can bring it in. Also doing it as a group, sort of the community of practice, if you will, within your school helps to have the whole school implementation is a lot better. It's not just the one STEM teacher who's bringing in the tech,
Right,
you know,
right.
but it's something that we all understand. Because as you asked the question to start with, what subject areas does it work with? Well, all of them. So what everyone, all of us should be together in this shift of bringing tools in, and how we do that is the question. Yeah.
Sarah, can you give some examples of really interesting things that teachers can do with AI that they can either do themselves or model and show their kids how to do?
Where do you want to start? Yeah, I mean, the first thing I would do is I would actually get a couple of chats going and ask the same question but in different tones, and watch how the different agents answer. Because you can't do that on the same age. You can't do that with the same chat because it picks up your tone and so on. And get them comparing this. Getting them to do different, put in different prompts. What kind of answers do you get? And then start pulling that apart. And like you said, really deconstructing it to find out what is going on here. Once you've done that, you can then start having them build their own agent and feeding it in their sources. And it could be, you know, it could be a simple AI agent that is about whatever the child is researching, and they found websites that they know are good websites, and they put their words in and feed their own project and things in. So they're building this, and that can then be used in the classroom by their peers to ask it questions and these kind of things. So they're actively creating it, that they're understanding how this bot is working because we built the database that it's getting its information. But then on a broader scale, and also with the older students, once they've understood this, there's so many more creative projects that you can do using the tools as an aspect of the project, but not as the entire project, right? So when we think about all of these, it's not just text that it's producing, right? We can generate music and film and photos and all of these different media that we can use to integrate into something bigger. And it's the same thing that we do when we use like the microbit and the makey makey and these different devices that you can code a program into something. We're not, that's not the main focus. It's what we use to attach it to make something bigger, right? So it's just one of the tools. So there are so many different ways that teachers can use AI to encourage children to, maybe they generate some content that they want to use later when they're doing a podcast or when they're putting together a film or whatever it might be. But there are loads of resources out there. I just attended a webinar a couple months ago about, you know, a cheat free way of using AI, because they are so much more personal. They're creative projects that are really human created, but they can use AI as the tools to bring in the content and to help them create things that I mean, we're not all filmmakers. So thank you. I'll use AI as a tool to help me create something, but it's not just feeding it in and taking it out. Or once you get something out generated from AI, what can you do with it further? There's a song that it creates the students created the lyrics and they put it in and it made a wonderful song out of it. Well, that's great, but wouldn't it be even better if the kids learned how to perform it and they performed that song themselves, singing, and you know what I mean? So bringing it from the human into the tool and back to the human again. I think that is what I would focus most on, whatever it is we're working on. Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant. Where would a teacher begin? I'm thinking about like the safety, the safety is always our number one concern, right? Like, I don't want to introduce this tool because, I don't want the kids to be exposed to XYZ on the internet. what can I do as an educator to make sure and to make sure that my parents feel that I'm safeguarding the children when they're in my care?
Yeah.
What can I do to help keep everybody safe and feel comfortable with AI or with digital platforms in general,
Yeah, I
technology?
would say with digital in general, because this goes for whether you're doing, an AI project, or if you're, if
Right.
you're doing anything on the internet or using any apps, really. And I think that's where it starts. Obviously, AI, hopefully, we're not working with that until they're older. I mean, here we have some countries who are starting to get it into law that, you can't have an account until 15, right? So putting a 15 age limit on there, and I'm applauding that for all it's worth. But whatever it is, when we start with something, for example, screens. Let's take the iPad as the example that most teachers of young children, especially 3 to 6, are quite resistant to. And I've heard it said the one place you'll never see a screen is in a Montessori preschool. And I react to that a bit strongly because there's a balance. And to what is the reason for that? That's a whole other that's a whole other discussion, which I'll gladly have another time. But remember that we have a very important Montessori principle when we present anything in the classroom, and that is limitation, right? We
Mm-hmm.
can limit. So when we have a screen, we can limit the apps that are on there. We can
Mm-hmm.
control it in a way. There are parental controls, and as a school, we would have controls as well as, firewalls and whatever it is that's there for them, even if it's just there's one single app that is on that iPad, right? The
Mm-hmm.
rest can be hidden. The rest can be removed out of their sight. So it's just that one thing that they are focusing on, and they're using that for a purpose, right? So there are
Yes.
things that we have to consider. How would we safeguard? And what are the fears? Okay, so let's approach the fears and find out. We're worried that they're going to get into a site that's not good for them. Great, we can work with that. We're worried that they're going to get into they're going to spend too long on a
Mm-hmm.
screen, whatever it is. But I think what's also important at the same time is that we work with how can we teach responsibility for this in the children themselves. So we do
Yes.
things like, instead of me setting up parental, you only have 1 hour, which I do, of course, I have on my kids stuff, yes. But but at the same time, it's let's teach our children to maybe we have a time a time glass. Sorry, that's the Norwegian, that's
Hourglass
her
or
hourglass,
timer.
that's it.
Yes.
Time glass, yeah. uh, and it's 15 minutes, and after the 15 minutes are up, we do our body check and we do our body scan. So are my eyes tired? How are my shoulders, right? And so we get back into our bodies, physically
Oh, I
back into our
love that.
bodies. And
Yes.
then I'm feeling okay. Okay, I'll go one more round, but it's a conscious choice that I'm making. I'm not just sitting and then 2 hours have gone by, right? So
Right.
there's all of these things that we can just going back to the just the basic principles of what these things are. We think of digital tools as so advanced and so advanced that it needs a special IT teacher, and it doesn't. It
Mm-hmm.
can be us, right? And if we
Yeah.
say, it's like it's like with anything else. We say, "Oh, there has to be a music teacher to teach the bells or the tone bars." No, it should be all of us presenting it at the level that the children are at, right? And
Yes.
this is exactly what I feel about the digital tools is we need to understand them ourselves, and then when we present them, we know why we're presenting it. So again, back to the intentionality of
Yes.
why we're presenting this and for
Well,
what.
and I think you hit on something that I think applies to us at all ages and all areas of responsibility. I think about my years as a school administrator and how often I probably sent someone an email message quickly from my office because it was quick, it was easy, it was
Mm,
a good use of my time. Whereas I could have it would have taken me a few more minutes, but I could have built more relationship with the person and avoided any miscommunication by simply walking down to the classroom or catching them on their way in or out of the school or in and out of their lunch, just to make that human connection and to make sure they felt valued. I could have also followed up on an email with that personal connection as well. But what also struck me was that getting in your body. I think about, as a school administrators, myself, as part of that, how much time I spent and continue to spend at the computer. And for me, one of the things that I've integrated into my day is to set the timer so that every 2 hours I get up and stretch or walk around. Because I do notice that for me, I tend to store a lot of tension in my neck and shoulders and my arms. And my interaction with technology is impacting me, my physical being, right? Yeah. And so if I'm not careful, I can feel that impact in a detrimental way, right? Sore muscles, sore hands, a headache. But remembering that this is a two-way interaction. It is a tool, and I'm so grateful for it. And I'm, grateful for these opportunities like today, where we can hear from an expert in Norway. And and we have Tim joining from the East Coast, and I'm down here in Costa Rica. We're connected in such a beautiful way. And the invention, we are using it with intention today, and I need to recognize how it might impact me. But I love making that physical connection, Sarah, and thank you for pointing that out. And reminding our children and our teachers, right, our employees, staff, whether they're in the classroom or someone who's sitting in the office doing spreadsheets, reminding them to get up and take a break for their own mental health and to feel connected to the other people in the organization. I think that's really critical. Thank you for that reminder.
You're very welcome. I think a lot of this is also personal experience.
Right?
So, and we do use technology. I have my wonderful watch that reminds me every hour, time to stand up. And so what have I done? I've gotten a stand desk. If I need to be at my desk, I can still, but I'm standing and I'm moving, and right, so that I'm being intentional. I'm setting I'm preparing my environment. That's what it is, right? But the something else you said about, taking the time to go and say something in person to someone. I had a conversation with someone about, this is wonderful because all of these digital tools and AI is going to make things so much easier. It's going to go faster. We're going to save so much time. And so I asked, so what are you going to do? What are you going to do with that time? Right?
Yes.
All that time we're saving, where do we put value then? What are we going to use that time for? And that is, I think, where, yes, we can send an email to save time, but the value that you then following up with a personal conversation, taking the time to actually, as we say, smell the roses, right? Get out and enjoy each other's company, get out into nature, take care of yourself emotionally and mentally. Use that time that we are saving, not just to stuff more work in, not just to add more to our list. We survived well enough before this. Let's actually take that time that we're saving to spend it with each other and to support each other in this as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it just reminds me of as also setting boundaries, right? So figuring out where we are. Where are we investing that time that we've saved? Are we just doing more work? Or are we using it to maximize our quality of life, right? And I think setting boundaries, Katie Keller Wood just wrote that beautiful book, Alignment.
Yes. Have it right back here.
Oh, yes. And thinking about where do we put those boundaries, right? And how do I don't think there is such a thing as work-life balance, not for me any one way. I'm still working on that, but
if you figure it out, please let me know.
I'll let you know. But I think, and her book goes into that. So if you haven't read Alignment, I really recommend it to you. But stop feeling.
I do as well. I highly recommend it.
I highly recommend the book. But when you were saying that too, it reminds me of that scene that I think we've all witnessed of a family at the dinner table with their phones in their hands and no one's talking. They're all engaged in their phones. And I was at dinner with my adult son. He just turned 40, but he got on me about, Mom, put your phone down. I'm right here. Pay attention to me. And I felt so, guilty. I turned it off. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have even glanced at it, but it pinged, and it's a habit. It's a bad habit.
It is.
But really thinking about, how are we spending our time? And it's those little things with the people you love. What message are we giving them? People that we're in relationship at work, at school. Yeah. What are we modeling to others? So no judgment, just something to think about, right?
Precisely. And that's you hit it on a nail on the head. That's exactly what it is. I will not judge anyone for any way that it is. All I do is I suggest that there are other ways, there are alternatives, and oftentimes it's become a habit. Someone's grown up. Sure. I mean, now the young parents now have grown up with their phones, and so it's not something that they might have reflected over. Some are going to be like, oh, this is too much, let's put it away. We always had it because I didn't grow up with a smartphone. I barely had one of those crank open when I was in college, but what we always have had the rule at our house, there are no phones at the table. If someone calls, if it pings, it can wait. The universe is not going to collapse on us while we're eating dinner. But that is the one time, especially now when I have two teenagers, that's the one time we get to talk. And now it's down to like once a week where we actually are all sitting together at the table. And I'm going to hold on to that as long as I can, because I value that connection. But at the same time, we can think about, well, okay, maybe there's others who have different routines, whatever it might be, but just think, can we put it away? And there's one other thing I just want to say. There's Amber Case is her name, and she works with the Calm Tech Institute, Calm Tech, and it's really amazing. And this is one of those things. Technology shouldn't distract us from living our being humans, living our lives. It shouldn't distract from our sleep. When we're having a conversation, do we have technology that is making me check my notifications on my watch all the time? Well, that's disrespectful, right? So all of these, what were social norms, have changed so drastically. We don't recognize it when people are walking around, through the subway and they're crashing into people, whatever it is, they stop at the top of the escalator on their phone. We've lost that connection to those around us. We've lost that awareness. And I think that's something that we can work with our children. It starts there. If we want to get changed back to being a community, it really starts with showing them that we are aware of each other and my actions have consequences, and all of these things that goes back to the grace and courtesy as well.
This has been a wonderful conversation. One more thing I'd like to play with, and that's how can we use AI as adults to help children learn philosophy, ethics, and debate?
Oh, you asked this now 5 minutes before the end.
All we do is tease it out a little bit.
Well, I'm wondering if you probably have some thoughts already about this, but one of the things, like we talked about, is asking a question in different ways and getting those answers. What we have often done is pretended that we are a group of, when we're a group of adolescents sitting around, we pretend to be, one of us is an AI. and the other one's putting in prompts. And what kind of response do I give? And these kind of things. And then you say, okay, but I want an answer that is more modeled according to this philosophy, or, and then they have to understand what that philosophy is to be able to respond in that way, right? So we can play a bit like this without even needing AI there. We can start to model these things, and then bringing it again, because I always will start with the hands-on human me using something. Then we can bring it in and feed it into the bots to get this conversation going, where you can ask the same question, but I want it in, from this philosopher's point of view, or with this ethical dilemma. How many points of view can we find for this dilemma, whatever it might be? Super important when we get into this, where we were discussing before, Lindsay, also about that my opinion is not the only one, nor is it necessarily the correct one, right? When we get
Right.
into these ethical discussions and we get a viewpoint that I never thought of before, that's amazing. That's wonderful, because now I have broadened my understanding. I don't have to take offense to it, right? And how to receive these things. Jump in. I don't know if you had any experience using this with the older students, but that would be those would be my first thoughts in the 2 minutes.
Mhm.
I think those are great examples. This has been such a wonderful conversation, and just letting the two of you run with this and play with the ideas together has been so refreshing. Before we stop, let me just see if anyone in the audience wants to jump in, and I see a few comments about how much they enjoyed it. Anyone have any questions for Sarah or Lindsay? And where we're at it is, what about, how bad can this get? I mean, everyone's doom and gloom. AI is going to take over the world, and we're not going to have any jobs, and no one's going to need Montessori teachers or accountants or whatever. Um, to me, that seems
Well,
rather silly.
what I usually say is that behind every fear, there is a value. That is why we have a fear, is because we have an underlying value. And if we are scared, if we are afraid that AI is going to take over the world, that means that the majority of us value humanity. That's how I
Yeah.
look at it. So I think we would be working towards limiting. Now, of course, I don't have control of the big AI companies who are creating these. What
Yeah.
I do have control over is my use, how I model my use, what I do in my classroom, in my school, with my teachers, wherever position we are in. We can be change makers where we are. And yes, maybe it will take over the world, but I have more hope in humanity than that. I have more faith in humanity than that, that we will work together. And again, it is, with great power comes great responsibility. It's up to all of us. But I always go back to what Montessori said, that peace starts in the classroom with the children. I think if we continue this way, we see it in the young people who are putting away their phones and having phone-free evening, or, weekends together, whatever, get-togethers. They are focused, they're realizing the relief it is to put away the social media for a bit, right? They're feeling it
Yes.
in themselves. And I think that we need to hold on to in faith, but also run with that concept that it is relaxing. I was in a classroom where they said, no, I think I'm done. I need a break from the screen now. And they put their computer away. That's huge. And that, I think, is what we can really believe will help us take this into the future. We don't know what's coming, but and as long as we have that growth mindset, we can be ready. Yeah.
That's right.
That's a great note to close on. Sarah, any closing thoughts from you? And then Lindsay, any closing thoughts from you?
Oh, well, I think we have to invest time in understanding things ourselves so that we can invest time in guiding our children. And when we are confident, our children pick up on that and they will be confident. But technology, it is powerful, but humanity hopefully is more powerful, and it is irreplaceable. If we've lost, we can't replace humanity. So really the focus should always come back to that, the inner work and the work that we do with each other. So I think with that focus, I'll pass it on to Lindsay.
Thank you, Sarah. I've learned so much from you today, Sarah, in this short time, and I look forward to reading your book. In preparation for today, I did go online and order a copy, so hopefully it'll be at my house when I get back to Houston.
Wonderful.
And I just so appreciate you, tying this all back to relationship and the sanctity of human connection, right? Of our worth as human beings. In Texas, I don't always agree with some of the things politicians are doing, but one thing that I think the representatives got right this year was banning cell phones in schools. And already, young people that I've talked to have expressed how grateful they are that those devices are no longer. I've heard that some of them are still sneaking them in, but overall, it's the relief to teachers and to young people has been tremendous on the school campuses. So again, looking at ways that we can support our children's connection to one another, their mental and physical and spiritual well-being is of tantamount importance. And I so appreciate all that you are doing to make our schools better places for everyone. So thank you for being here today, Sarah, and thank you for all that you're doing in your spaces.
Thank you for allowing me to share with you. And I'm very much not at the end, so we are all working on this together. And I think we'll really be able to continue the work and come with more solutions and more good ideas and strategies. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks so much, Lindsay, for suggesting that Sarah join us. Sarah, thank you for staying a little later in the home office there in the cold, dark of Norway. And I hope you'll come back again, my friend. And congratulations on EMC,
Thank you so very much.
European Montessori College.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Well, this is Tim
Best
Sheldon
wishes
from
to everyone.
Thank you, Sarah.
Montessori Foundation saying good night, everyone. We will see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.